If you were hurt by trauma when you were a kid, you're already painfully aware of how the old hurts and fears and triggers come back to haunt you right when you're trying to take a big step up in your career. And it's not that you're not smart enough or capable enough, it's the trauma injury inside. It can rise up sometimes and make you say the wrong thing or lose your focus or get overwhelmed and take yourself out of the running for an opportunity that you really wanted. Has this ever happened to you? It's a terrible waste of your talent. And I want to show you some strategies so that even though you have PTSD from childhood, you can show up and be strong and do great things in your work life. I'm Anna Runkle, also known as the Crappy Childhood Fairy, and I teach people how to heal the symptoms of complex trauma from childhood so that you can free yourself from destructive patterns that maybe in the past have sabotaged your work life and held back your ability to rise up the ladder of career growth and income. I don't talk about money enough on this channel, I think. But as a person who grew up poor, I can tell you that a lack of money and fear around money can make you really vulnerable to more trauma in your life because it can pressure you to take jobs that are miserable for you and to cling to bad relationships only because you can't afford to leave. Now, our careers bring security and choices into our lives, both very important when you're setting your life up for healing from the past. Your career is also one of the ways that you express yourself, what you are, who you are, what you bring to this world and to the people around you. And when this goes well, it is in itself healing for the wounds of your past trauma. I believe we need to develop and express these gifts. And when that's blocked, and that's exactly what PTSD can do, it's miserable. It's not just that you have all these symptoms, it's that you can't do what you're meant to do. And that is miserable. That's where you get the feeling that life is passing you by. Have you ever had that? When time is passing, but you're stuck outside of your life, it feels like, and the happiness you know you're capable of is like somewhere outside where you can't get to it. So that's a big part of healing from past trauma, getting your life back, becoming who you're meant to be and doing work that serves the world and that's fulfilling to you. Doesn't that sound good? Healing trauma isn't just about trying to be someone else. It's about becoming more of yourself. And yes, you are someone who was traumatized and you have great things to bring to this world anyway. This is your chance to not let the past limit everything about your future. What happened in the past, it's real, but what you do with your life today is even more real. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to spot where your PTSD is getting you stuck and teach you some strategies to free yourself and go further in your career than you thought was possible because the world needs you, all right? That's why we need you. So let's talk for a moment about the ways old trauma shows up in your work life. Now, in my experience, there are 4 main trouble spots. One is your ability to work with other people has some gaps in it. Some spots where you get triggered, especially around teams and your sense of belonging in them and around bosses and either their authority over you or trying to get their approval of you. Am I right? Have you had this? If you grew up with abuse or neglect, these ordinary aspects of working with other people, they can be just so fraught and confusing. And that can lead to you wanting to avoid people and challenges that are important to getting where you're trying to go. Or it can lead you to walk in like a deer in the headlights into work situations that repeat the abuse and neglect that hurt you in the first place. Bosses and coworkers who are bullies, manipulators, excluders, the mean girls in high school. And if you grew up with this kind of thing, you might know that you need to get out of there, but it can make you paralyzed. You start to doubt yourself. And it's not rational, but that's what trauma can do. Okay? So that's the people you work with. The second way trauma can show up in your work life is in your tendency to get dysregulated around unpleasant people or just around any kind of stress or deadline pressure or self-doubt, which everybody has at work sometimes. Now, you've probably heard me talk about dysregulation. It's a brain state that's common for people with childhood PTSD. Any kind of stress can make you feel spaced out, discombobulated, overwhelmed, or it can make you feel over-emotional with feelings like panic or rage or just getting upset until you cry, which is never fun at work, I happen to know. But it's especially painful when you're freaking out and you're confused about whether the thing that's upsetting you is even real, right? or you know it's not reasonable to be freaking out, but you can't stop. And if this has happened to you, you know there's a lot of shame wrapped up in it, and that shame all by itself can stop you from being who you are. And it can stop you from going for the work that you really love. So it's devastating. The third way that trauma can show up in your work life is when it crushes your brilliance. That chronic ongoing stress and intensity of having CPTSD in your brain, when you don't have a way to calm it down, it just starts like robbing you of your ability to focus, and it's draining you of your productivity, your enthusiasm, and it makes you feel like a dumbed down version of yourself. Have you experienced that? And of course, CPTSD symptoms create a negative cycle around money. I grew up poor, for example. My mother had grown up middle class and had a great education, but the chaos in our family around her addiction and drinking, if you have that in your family, you know how it gets wrapped up in everything and sucks the life out of it. So we were on and off welfare for several years. And when I was very little, we were hungry sometimes. And she'd go out for a while, for more than a couple of days sometimes, and we'd have to find something to eat and get ourselves to school. And my clothes would be dirty and I'd have no jacket, that kind of thing. So poverty can cause trauma, and trauma can cause poverty. You can break that cycle, but if you haven't done it yet, that trauma can keep getting back into your life. Trauma has a tendency to beget more trauma sometimes. You probably have experienced that. Maybe your trauma symptoms cause you to lose a job or drop out of school, or you never go for anything challenging or well paid because of that big trauma-shaped hole in your self-confidence. Or you're worried that being around people and working with them is just going to be too triggering. Or you gravitate to cruddy jobs just because you know you won't have to deal with people. Kind of helps cut short that dysregulation. But it cuts you off from learning to work with other people and deal with them, which is a big part of being successful in life as well as work. And the thing is, when you're broke or struggling financially, you are extra vulnerable to re-traumatizing yourself through the choices you have to make. Staying in a bad relationship or a miserable job because you can't or you feel you can't make that leap to something better. So what can you do to stop the negative cycle and start taking positive steps to do the important and meaningful work that you know is inside you? I call this breaking the wheel, okay? The wheel is that hurricane of bad thoughts and feelings and actions and outcomes that just goes round and round, and it can be hard to escape. You don't even try to climb out, just break it. That's what I'm saying. Just take a big stick and jam it in there wherever it lands. Do the thing about your trauma that is right in front of you. Make the change that's doable for you. If something's too hard, not that, do the thing that's doable. Is it taking a class? Go sign up. Is it quitting a crap job? Maybe it's time. Is it changing where you live so that you can pay down debts and start building up savings again? Yes, that's a good idea. Being economical feels good. Start where you are and change the thing in front of you. When you're healing, work can be an opportunity to grow and heal and evolve if you're engaged in healing your past trauma. For this, a few things are important, all right? One is you need a way to discharge PTSD thinking before it spills out of your mouth and into your work life. Those urgent feelings in CPTSD that would make you lash out at other people or sabotage yourself when you're upset, you can always wait a day to do that, assuming you're not in physical danger, that is. If you need techniques to get those thoughts and feelings out safely, I've got a link in the description section that you can follow for my free course. I'm always talking about it. Look for the words free course down there, and I'll teach you how to calm the symptoms so that you can take smart actions from a calm and clear place. The second thing I really encourage you to give yourself for healing trauma is support. Now, maybe this is a therapist, maybe it's a trusted friend, a 12-step sponsor, or a group who can be your sounding board when you don't know if you're being abused or just running through an old emotional loop. It goes both ways, right? And to learn discernment, it helps to have gentle feedback from somebody you trust. The third thing is practice recognizing when CPTSD symptoms are happening so that you can take measures to come back into a regulated state before you try to communicate or solve anything. And I'll put more course links in the description section if you need help with that. It also helps to be very practical about your work life. What happens with complex trauma sometimes is that unmet needs from childhood leak into everything else. And we can go through our workday hurting that we didn't get enough acknowledgement or appreciation, things like that. And yeah, that can be a real thing. But for those of us who didn't get it as kids, the pain around it can get kind of oversized. So this is something to try to stay grounded about, to keep expectations right-sized. Now, one thing I didn't learn until pretty far into my career, and it made a bigger impact than anything else I'd learned up to that point, is that when you take a job, you're paid to make the organization and the other people who run it successful. And I did used to be somebody who didn't get that. I was worried more about what the job was giving me. So that's important, but it needed to be balanced with what I contributed. And I'm telling you, when this was explained to me by a mentor, not a work mentor, I never had a work mentor, honestly, but someone helped me see it, that shifting my focus like this made my career finally take off out of dumbed down work and on to a series of new opportunities that ultimately led me right here to be with you, trying to help you be successful. You can consider orienting yourself in a similar way towards the service of other people. Now, that's not being a servant. That is bringing your gifts to bear, and I'm telling you, there is nothing more satisfying and fulfilling. It requires a lot of continuous learning, but you'll see how your old sense of disappointment and hurt sort of just gets swept away by a sense of self-worth and dignity when you're serving. Now, when you're bringing the best of yourself to work, not being a doormat, not being a Klingon who stays in bad situations, but bringing your best self, it gradually reveals even more of the goodness that's coded into you. You were meant for better things than a life that's limited by trauma. You're designed to heal and to grow and to bring good things into the world through everything you do, including your work, including the way you make money. Now, if you get triggered at work and you want to learn quick ways to calm that down before you do anything drastic at work, here's a video where I teach strategies to do exactly that, so you can go a little deeper into the topic. And I will see you soon.